What's going on, guys? Today I've got another good one for you. Today we're back on the Cat Eye Chevy project truck, and we're going to address a known issue on these vehicles. Once they get older and get some miles on them and get some years on them, well, then the oil pickup tube O-ring will get to be kind of hardened, sometimes cracked, sometimes brittle, and replacing it with a new one can yield some really good results on raising the oil pressure on these trucks. And on ours, it's not really super low. It's down around 23 psi at hot idle oil pressure, verified by the HB Tuners scanner. And so I believe it can do even better than that. And also, we're doing a lot of testing with this truck. There's a lot of testing that hasn't been done with the Draggy on different mods on this vehicle. And so I'm trying to show y'all some of that. We've already done the weight reduction. We've already done the tune only with the otherwise stock truck. We've got a lot more tests coming. We got a lot of quarter-mile runs coming. And doing all that, I want to have the best oil pressure possible so that this truck can live a long life. It's a 2005 Chevy single cab short bed Silverado 5.3 V8 for those that don't know. And we're gonna work on getting this oil pickup tube O-ring changed out. Please hit like on the video. It helps out the video, it helps out the channel. There's lots of people that need to see this to help out the life of their engine so that it will live a long life. And these 5.3s usually live a long life. There's no sense in having like a $3 oil pickup tube O-ring to, you know, take out the engine premature. So we've got 212,000 miles on this one for those that don't know. All right, so let's get into the truck. We're going to crank it up. We're going to look at the current oil pressure real fast, and then we're going to get in the shop and we're going to fire it up. This is going to be a cold start. The temperature outside's around 40 degrees, and the truck has not been started up yet today. So let's take a look at what we got. There's 3 lines between the 40 and the one between 0 and 40, so that would be 20 on the bigger line. So we're just a hair below between 20 and 40. So it's at probably 28 to maybe 30 pounds at best on a cold start. I would expect this to probably be a bit higher than that. Also, while driving, it will come up sometimes, but sometimes it just kind of hangs in the same area, which makes me wonder if that oil pickup tube O-ring could be somewhat of the problem. So we're going to change it out. Like I said, it's a cheap part. It certainly can't hurt to change it out. There's also some oil down on the oil pan, which could be an oil pan gasket potentially. So we will put a fresh oil pan gasket on the truck as well and clean all that up as we go. So let's get inside the shop. Let's get to work. We are now up under the truck. You're going to want to jack up your truck. You're going to want to put some jack stands underneath the frame section back towards the back, because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this cross member, which is directly beneath the oil pan. So to do that, you're going to have to remove these 2 support bars, and then also you're going to have to remove this cross member. So I suggest getting some safety glasses, because there's going to be a lot of dirt, a lot of grime and stuff up underneath this vehicle, and you don't want it falling down in your eyes. So I highly suggest that. And then get you like a wire brush to help you clean up all this junk on the bolts. Get the threads on the back side nice and clean, and get the section where the socket's going to go on nice and clean. These are an 18 millimeter right here, and the 2 cross braces. So we're going to get that removed now. braces is off. We're looking at this from the opposite direction that I had it on from the other view. You can see the 2 bolts on both sides are out. However, we still have 2 more left. Up inside this big hole and that larger hole there is a 15 millimeter head of a bolt, and up top and right there at the end of the light right there is the end of the threads of the bolt, and the nut that's poking through that's still holding on the cross member. So there's a total of 6 bolts holding on the cross member. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 and 6. Here's the back of our oil pan. As you can see, it's pretty wet. I've looked up on the side of the block and it does look like the oil pan gasket is leaking, so we'll be taking care of that along with the O-ring. Now we'll drop down the cross member. Just like so. And now with it out of the way, we have tons of room up in here to work on this oil pan. What we're going to do is drain the oil out of the bottom of the oil pan. So now that most of the oil is all drained out, we will put our plug back in for now. So like I was saying, wear some safety glasses or something, because all that dirt there, all that just came off from that cross member that was taken out. So if you're up underneath it, chances are you're going to get that crap in your eyes. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to unplug the oil level sensor. You'll want to take like a pick tool, get it up in here, and use that to pry the little arms up of the sensor. There it is. So you'll just pry back and up on this little end right here to pull it up, and it'll release it. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to get all of these transmission lines and this electrical off of here. And to do that, there is a bolt right up there by the end of my finger. It's a 10 millimeter, and we've got to back this off, and we got to get it off the side of the oil pan. It's not really in a very fun spot to deal with, so I've got a 10 millimeter shallow and 3/8 inch drive. So I'm gonna get that pulled off of there real quick to get that free. And now that that's done, we have to get these 2 15 millimeters out that go from the bell housing to the oil pan. Now up in the front, to gain some more access, we're going to get rid of this plastic skid plate and remove it. It has 2 15 millimeters down at the bottom and 3 15 millimeters across the top. So now up here at the front bottom section of the oil pan, below the harmonic balancer, the crank pulley, you can see right above my finger, there is a 10 millimeter going that way. That is holding this plastic piece that has a bunch of wiring and stuff on it in the way of getting these bolts out of the bottom of the oil pan to drop it. So we've got to pull that off and move this wiring out of the way. And now that that 10 millimeter is out of the way, this plastic piece just rotates out over here to the driver's side. And as you can see, it's now loose. So that'll get out of our way for the oil pan bolts in the front. All right, y'all, and then the last thing to take out before we start pulling all 15 oil pan bolts is we got one bolt right here, which it is holding on this piece of plastic which covers this hole by the starter. There we go. So now that bolts out. All right, one other thing to note, on the other side is another plastic piece. This one is seated like this onto the oil pan, and it's caked up with nasty stuff. It's just held on by one 10mm bolt into the oil pan. Just take that off, and that's similar to the other side that we just covered. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to loosen up these two bolts for the rack and pinion, because the rack and pinion needs to lower down just a little bit so the front of the oil pan can clear the oil pickup tube where it mounts up onto the oil pump itself. So these are 15/16, and we're gonna loosen up the nuts on the back side and then pull out the bolts and let the rack and pinion relax down a little bit. All of the oil pan bolts are pretty short and up top, except for the bottom two. There's one here and one on the other side near where we pulled the 15mm bolts out that go into the oil pan. So just take note, these two oil pan bolts are long and the others are short. All the oil pan bolts are 10mm. And then now I've got all but two of the oil pan bolts out, which is what you want to do, because you want to leave a couple that are holding it up until you're ready to bring it the rest of the way down. All right, so as you can see, I got the oil pan off finally. Had to maneuver the rack and pinion a little bit down, get it relaxed out of the way so that the front of it would clear, and then work the oil pickup out of the pan. And it looks like this motor has a little bit of nastiness to it. So it's a good thing it's getting taken apart and cleaned up. So it looks like there's some sludge a little bit in our pickup strainer. I don't see any nasty metal pieces or anything, just looks like the oil needed to be changed a little bit more frequent. I got the taller deep filter, which will help me take and filter out and catch more of this junk. So we got to take off a bolt here, take off the bolt here, and take off a bolt right up there. That's right off the back of the oil pump. So it's a little bit hard to see with everything so dirty and so nasty, but not to worry, we'll get this cleaned up. So now I'm gonna get this oil pickup off and we will get a look at what that O-ring looks like. All right, y'all, this thing is pretty nasty. Check this out. In that oil pickup, you can see all that grime, slime, sludge. That's what that oil pump was having to pick up oil through most of the time. So that would probably explain why also revving it up did not increase the flow and the oil pressure a whole lot, because that screen is pretty gummed up. The oil pickup tube O-ring, as you can see, I'm trying to focus in on it real good. You can see it's pretty flattened on the outside. And I will compare it here shortly to the new one. I don't see any cracking on it, but this thing is nasty, y'all. This is why you change your oil. And this oil pan is really nasty. And the gasket has definitely seen better days. There is no ridging at all to the rubber. It's completely flat now and worn out, which explains why the gasket itself was leaking. This is just slimy. Some of it's caked on. I honestly did not think it was going to be this bad. The O-ring part number is 12584922. That is the part number for the red pickup tube O-ring, which is what my 2005 Chevy Cat-Eye 5.3 LM7 engine requires. And then remember I was telling you, I went ahead and I picked up the big Wix filter. So this is the part number for the tall one. This one is easily double the size of the one that's on there. I'll take it out so y'all can get a look at it. As you can see, the new Wix oil filter is a lot bigger than the other small one that normally comes on this truck. So I went ahead and I got the big one, and like I said, I've obviously got a lot of junk to catch out of this engine, so you better believe I'm gonna be running this part number for this larger Wix oil filter on this truck. Let me give y'all a tip real fast for cleaning up the oil pickup tube and help cleaning up even some of that oil pan. You know, a lot of people use stuff like this, the tub of towels, heavy duty cleaning wipes for their hands and everything. But I tell you what, you can use that same wipe not only for your hands, which cleans up your hands, but you can use it to clean your parts. And you can use it to make this part that was full of grease. You can make it look just like new by just using this and just using some elbow grease, and it'll clean it right on off. See that? Looks like a brand new part right from the factory. All right, y'all, so for the cleanup on the pan, I'm taking out these 4 10mm bolts. 4 of these hold in this little tray where the oil pickup tube goes. That thing is nasty. All right, so let's see how bad the bottom of this is. Oh my gosh. Look at that junk. All right, y'all, I'm gonna take a putty knife and I'm gonna scoop this stuff out so y'all can see this. Look at that nasty, nasty crud. Look at that. That's what happens when you don't change your oil like you should. On this oil pan gasket, you've got a rivet right here. That'll have to be drilled out and removed. Then you've also got a rivet right there. That'll have to be drilled out and removed. And then that'll take off the oil pan gasket. That's just all that junk that oil pickup was trying to suck up. That is nasty. Anyways, I just had to show that to y'all. So here's a side-by-side comparison of the new O-ring and the old one, which you can see is not as big and round and is really flattened off. Take some of this junk off of here so y'all can kind of See it? So a new one is going to go on the oil pickup, and we're going to lube it up with some fresh oil so that it'll go into the oil pump nice and smooth. All right, y'all, so after hours and hours of wiping down the oil pan, the windage tray, this tray by the oil pickup and everything, I've gotten most all of the nasty junk out of the bottom of here. I put the oil pickup tube in a hot bath of Dawn for it to soak, and I have been blowing it out with compressed air, blowing it out backwards down that pipe and forcing it out the opposite way that it picks up oil, and have been using a pick. So I'll show you that in a minute. It's a lot cleaner than it was. And put a little blue Loctite on these when you install them back on this tray right here that goes into the oil pan. Put a little blue Loctite on there and tighten these 10 millimeters down. If you took this out to help clean up your oil pan and everything, which hopefully you did, whether it's super nasty like mine was or if it was okay. All right, y'all, I've got the pickup tube looking like brand new. Like I mentioned earlier, soaking it in the hot soapy water really helped clean it up a lot. And I'm trying to see if I can show y'all the best I can. But you remember how gummed up it was. Now it's much, much cleaner. We're going to take our oil pickup O-ring and we're going to put it on. I've got it in some fresh oil. We're just going to slide that on this pickup. We're going to put it on just like that. So now we've got our new red oil pickup tube O-ring on there, full of oil. And now we're just going to install it back onto the truck. It's going to go back together just the same way that you saw it come apart. So I don't want to bore you with all the details of putting this whole thing back in. I'm going to get this put back up in there, and then I'll catch y'all when it comes time to prime the system with oil and check and see what our new oil pressure is. All right, so now the new O-ring for the oil pickup tube has been installed. Everything else has been put back under the truck, and I have put on that new Wix oil filter. I pre-filled it. I always pre-fill my oil filters. And then I've also put in my 6 quarts of oil. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the coil pack on both sides. Disconnecting the main plug right here will disconnect all 4 for one side. So then with the coil packs unplugged, we will turn the truck over, and it obviously will not fire up, but it will prime the oil system and get us to where we're going to get oil pressure much sooner than if we were to take and actually just try to bust this thing off right now. It would take a little bit for it to actually get oil pressure. So we obviously don't want a dry start if we can help it, and we can help it. As you can see, the passenger side coil set is unplugged. The driver side coil set is unplugged. Now we're going to go into the truck. We're going to turn it over. All right, now we're going to plug back in our coil packs. So now that both coil packs are plugged in, we're gonna fire the truck up, see what kind of oil pressure we got. Wow. So now with the oil pickup cleaned out and the new O-ring, let me see if I can get a little bit closer and show it. We've got over 40 pounds of oil pressure, where before we had a little bit over 20. That is a big improvement. We've increased it easily by 15 pounds of oil pressure. Wow, and I've never seen it go that high since I've owned the truck. Just giving it some gas and just revving on it a little bit. All right, well, I would say that job was very well worth it. If all that gummed up oil were to have actually finished off clogging up the oil pickup tube, then I would have lost oil pressure completely. But instead, the truck now should live quite a bit longer. Now that the oil pan has been all cleaned out, the oil pickup tube has been cleaned out, the oil pump O-ring has been replaced, and then I also took off the windage tray off of the bottom where it goes on to the main caps, and I cleaned it all up. I'm really happy with that. 40 pounds of oil pressure, 212,000 mile vehicle. Wow, and it shoots right on up there, up over 60. Even doing those wide open throttle runs, I never saw over 60 pounds. Think about the highest I ever saw was about 53 to 55 pounds on the HP tuners when I was scanning it. So, I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Please, again, hit that thumbs up, hit that like button. Please also consider subscribing to the channel, and also leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate y'all for watching. Have a good one.